meeting. What's this, Linda? No, it just says got it here. This little thing right in the middle here.
This meeting is being live streamed.
Okay, you are live.
Okay, we're having a bit of a difficulties here tonight. Phil, John, and Wenda couldn't get through, so she just left a couple minutes ago to Kevin Richmond. So traffic might be heavy in Camden East, so we're going to go ahead and start. Anyway, we're going to call the meeting to order, and I'd like the approval of the agenda for the July 12th meeting. Moved by Sherry, second by Kevin. All in favor? Carried. Kevin, I can't see your hand when you're putting it up, so maybe that's
I'll
better.
use this one. Yeah, I noticed
Okay.
too.
Okay, we got the agenda approved. Any conflicts of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Showing none. I want approval of the minutes of the June 21st Stone Mill meeting. Looking for approval, moved by John, second by Debbie. Any questions or comments on them? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Delegation deputations, none. Bylaws and resolutions. Bylaw to provide delegated authority to the municipal treasurer to enter into a tax sale agreement on behalf of the municipality. Brian, do you want to explain this a little bit? We talked about it the other day.
I will, Your Worship. Under the Municipal Act, there's a requirement for any individual that's qualified to go to tax sale. Should they wish to make a payment arrangement, there's a requirement to enter into an agreement with council. We talked about this from a staff perspective last week. There's two alternatives. Every agreement could come to council for execution, or council could delegate the authority to the treasurer to create those agreements on behalf of the municipality. And then in the case where there's a default, the original tax sale procedures would prevail. It's management's recommendation that with the potential for economic recovery and some hardships coming out of COVID, that we feel that rather than an individual having to come to council and have a very public process to enter into an agreement, that it may be council's appetite to delegate that authority to the treasurer and allow her to enter into those agreements and save the individual the potential of having to come to council in a very public process and request that agreement. So that agreement this evening would delegate that authority to the treasurer to have an agreement, a payment plan, which is often the agreement, to an extension to the tax sale payments.
Any questions for Brian on this? Go ahead, Doug.
Just maybe more so for Christina. Do we see or do we have any large increase in receivables on taxes?
We do not, but because of the delays that were imposed for the COVID-19 restrictions on following through with tax sales, I'm now getting people coming forward asking for these extension agreements. And if I have to bring forward every person's personal reasoning, I was a little concerned about putting that out in the public forum.
I understand that. No,
Yeah.
I'll move it.
Sorry, John, did you have a question first?
No, it's okay. Doug asked the question.
Okay, good. So, sorry, you made the motion, Doug?
Yes,
I need first, second, third reading.
Yep.
Moved by Doug, seconded by Sherry. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Next being a bylaw to authorize the franchise agreement between the Township and Enbridge Gas Company. Go ahead, Brian.
Your Worship, in March this year, Enbridge Gas come to the municipality as the contractual agreement with the municipality had expired. They gave this draft model franchise agreement along with the draft bylaw for consideration of council to get pre-consideration and essentially agreement in principle prior to sending this information to the OEB, the Ontario Energy Board, for approval. You'll see in the council agenda that decision, that order has been complete, and now Enbridge Gas is asking us to complete and execute the agreement, as well as complete the last two readings of the bylaw to essentially put this into effect.
Any questions? Go ahead, Kevin.
Brian, what does that mean? That they're going to extend the line somewhere, or what? I just wasn't clear as what the agreement's for.
Yeah, so the agreement is actually for exclusive rights to the infrastructure that they have in place, Councillor Richmond. So they essentially made that original investment. I think it was actually under the title of Union Gas, and now has been transferred to Enbridge. So there is no expansion that's listed as part of this agreement. It just it's a franchise agreement with the municipality to essentially lay out the parameters as to who does what, and that basically they have exclusive rights to the system as it was their infrastructure that was originally put in place.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? I'm looking for a motion. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in the agreement, Brian, as to what happens to their infrastructure should they go out of business. So we end up with pipes and valves under our roads. I don't know what else kind of thing. What's your understanding of what happens to all that junk if Enbridge goes under? I mean, it's a 20-year agreement. That puts us to 2041. By that time, we're supposed to be virtually off fossil fuels. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on stranded assets.
To be honest, Deputy Revise, I've really not saw that as a problem, in the sense that I suspect there's another entity that may choose to use that infrastructure if Enbridge wanted to abort it, given that the infrastructure is in place. But as far as, any sort of residual costs to remove that from the ground, you're absolutely correct. There is no provision in this agreement for that.
I know it's beyond the scope of the township's authority to deal with questions like that, but that's the exact kind of issue that the provincial and federal governments are going to be faced with if they're serious about the targets that they've set. So it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm looking for a motion for the first, second, and third reading. And also in that there, the further that the Reeve and CAO sign the agreement. Moved by Kevin, seconder by Sherry. Any more questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Staff reports, Manager of Development Service, Township of Stone Mills official plan update. Must be Jason here somewhere. There he is.
Everybody hear me?
Yes. Just
Thank
barely.
you.
That's better.
That's better. Thank you, Reeve Smith. The first item on the agenda in my topic here is an exciting one, I would say. The township has now released its draft official plan update for public comment. It was released, and I apologize, staff apologize if there was confusion in the minds of council and or any members of the public who saw this release on our municipal webpage, as well as circulation from staff in advance of tonight's meeting, as staff feel or are of the opinion that having that extra week for public comment was more important than holding off for the sake of informing members of the community as to how this is proceeding. Sorry, I'm just struggling a little bit. There's birds chirping in my, I'm not sure if we can mute or.
How do you mute my phone?
I'll keep, so first and foremost, you're aware there's multiple items on tonight's agenda as it relates to the draft official plan update. There's a summary page that overviews largely the scope of the update. And as many of us are aware, there have been very substantive legislative changes since our 2014 official plan that is currently in effect. The County of Lennox and Addington has updated and endorsed their first official plan. So we now have a county's upper tier direction that our official plan must comply with and conform to from a policy perspective. In addition to that, the province has released its 2020 provincial policy statement. So those two major policy documents are the first and foremost as it relates to importance from our policy update. And that is largely what has been released for public comment at this time. Tonight, the purpose of tonight's meeting is by no means to go through any or exhaustive line item as it relates to what those updates are. Staff have released a 6-week window to August 20th, 2021, seeking input from members of the community, members of our partner organizations such as the conservation authorities, the ministries, public health, OMAFRA, et cetera. So that information has been released for comment, as well as all the schedules with any of the mapping changes that are included. Again, the purpose of this evening's meeting is to provide that level of information and insight as to where those documents can be found on our website. And they're also, of course, available in this evening's agenda package for council. But there has been a separate web page on the Township of Stone Mills website that's been dedicated to this official plan update with all the documentation there. Myself, as well as Cindy Hike, have been included as key contacts with direct communication lines on the webpage for comment. And we have already, which has been great, received a couple of notices as it relates to what individuals wish to have considered from a policy perspective in our update. So again, I'm hopeful that that's helpful for members of the public who may have been confused. And again, we apologize for that at staff's level with the release of the documents in advance of this evening's information reporting. However, the purpose of this meeting this evening is for that. Before I conclude, I would like to say that many of us are aware that there's statutory requirements under the Planning Act as it relates to public meetings, public open houses, public notification in the newspapers, for example, as it relates to what we are doing through an official plan update as a municipality. To date, none of that has been accomplished from my perspective. This official plan update, as you know, was initiated in advance of my arrival with the municipality. There may have been all of the requirements that somebody could say had been met in terms of a statutory obligation. However, they'll all be done again. We are making sure from a policy perspective and from a notification point of view that all of that complies and does exceed what we're required to. The idea for why we have advanced to date is largely, as I mentioned, the updates are before us tonight and for them till mid-August are policy led. As you'll note, there's many direct references to provincial policy and many direct references to the county's policies, as opposed to specific new update or new provision or new idea that wants to be incorporated into the OP. So I say that because the projection of staff is to get the policy detail released for comment and then hold statutory meetings once initial feedback has been received from our community members, our special interest groups, and partner agencies as it relates to that update. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Jason, in the past, and I'm thinking of several OP updates, we've had a very successful process where we had a couple meetings with the Committee of Adjustment, people who have used the system. And during those meetings, you get to listen to everybody's questions and concerns, and that quite often leads to people thinking maybe something different than they did. Is there any thought to us doing the same process here, possibly having a couple of meetings with the Committee of Adjustment?
Through you, Reeve Smith, that's a great point, Councillor Davison. I haven't given a great detail or thought into how that would be incorporated. Our members of the Committee of Adjustment are aware of the update. We had a meeting last week with 9 applications on the agenda. So they're most definitely aware. I would say from a statutory perspective, a Committee of Adjustment hearing the update would not meet statutory requirement. That's a commitment of council. But I'm not saying that I wouldn't rule that out, if you will. They're aware of the update, and they're encouraged to comment on it from their experiences through the Committee of Adjustment and Active Applications. And if that's something that we want to hold a special meeting and have direct invite to committee members, by all means, staff can initiate that outreach.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking from a statutory point of view. I was thinking from the fact of the old adage that many heads are better than one. When an individual, myself or anybody else, reads this in solitude, we only have our own individual thoughts on it. When you listen or have the opportunity to listen to a number of other people's thoughts, it sometimes stimulates more questions, more concerns. And I'm just saying it's worked well in the past, and I would consider that we should have it in the future for this, but I'm willing to listen to others.
Okay, anybody else for now? Go ahead, Sherry.
I just wondered, Jason, have you had any feedback yet? Like, you don't have to be specific or about certain things, but is it too soon to expect that, or?
Through you, Reeve Smith, yeah, Councillor Milligan, we've received a couple pieces of correspondence, nothing specific to, this ought to be included or this ought to be excluded. But I'm happy to say that there's members of our community who are actively reviewing our website and seeing those updates. And I'm hopeful that this evening's meeting on this council agenda brings attention to the discussion. There was a mass electronic mail out, that went out from staff last week to garner input as well. So it's starting, and hopefully that does continue.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Can I have a motion to receive the report? Moved by Sherry, second by Wenda. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, Township of Stone Mills Planning and Development, Bertel.
Thanks, Reeve Smith. This is an agenda item I'm very excited about. I'm very excited to be in front of council this evening to present this to you, truthfully. It, again, similar to our official plan update, it's an item that has been public for a week now. It's been on our municipal webpage for that time. It has, I'm not an IT guru by any means, so I'm not tracking with what uptake it has been received, but from a public input, from a public notification, and from a planning perspective that seeks to garner that input from throughout the municipality, I think this is an absolutely fundamental tool that puts us as a municipality above and beyond what many other municipalities are doing from an outreach perspective. I've had conversations already with our neighboring municipalities, two of them, who are very interested in what we've done and would like to see that in their communities. And I want to commend the efforts of both our County of Lennox-Addington GIS staff, as well as our Manager of Compliance, Mr. James Richmond. They've worked tirelessly on this to ensure that it meets a very simple yet effective design. In my mind, there's simplicity, there's effectiveness and simplicity. And I think this is one of those portals that really does achieve what it ought to do, but not being overly cumbersome. So in short, what this portal is a public mapping tool that you can view the entirety of the municipality and see all active planning applications in the community. And the key to that is you can see them geographically. So members of the Camden East area can see what they might be interested in, where members of another area of the municipality and ratepayers may be interested in some other type of application type and or geographical area. And with that, I've probably already taken away too much information, but Mr. Richmond is going to use the share screen function and walk you through in live form how this portal system works, how it can be found on our webpage, and what the efficiencies and effective uses are of this system.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'll go off the screen. You should see mine. So everyone can see our website here. So on the homepage of our website, there's a new link to our planning application portal. This link can also be found under the planning page as well, in case people are looking there for any information. But I anticipate this is where most of our hits for this portal will come from. So by clicking on the link, opens up what's called an ArcGIS Online dashboard. So as Jason alluded to, working with the county GIS department there, they were great in getting us set up initially for this, and then I sort of refined it from there. So they were a great help to me. So as soon as you click on the link, this opens up and you have the map of the township with a bunch of dots on it. Over to the left is a listing of all the planning applications that we have. So any red applications are severances. And then we have some green, which are minor variances, and one site plan control. Over on the right is a legend for anyone that wants to know what those dots represent as well. So there's a variety of different things you can, ways you can navigate around here. So you can just simply zoom into an area. You can pan around and then you can click on a dot. So by clicking on one of the dots, it opens up some basic information about that planning application. So it has the file number, type of application, civic address, the applicants, current OP designation, current zoning designation, and then a description of what the application is. Also with that, we attach the survey sketch for that application, which we can bring up and get a better reference of what that application is involved with. On the left-hand side, we can also scroll through, and if we want to pick out an application from here, we can simply click on it. It will zoom the map to it and highlight it on the map. You can also go up to the search function and you can type in any address and search by address, and it will zoom the address to where the person selects. So and then it will take us right to the municipal office there. So it's very basic information that's on here, just addresses and roads, as well as the application points. And we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. The other thing that we added here down at the bottom left is a subscribe button. So by clicking on the subscribe button, it opens up a form which allows people to enter in their email address. When they do, every time we put a new point on the map, they will get an email notification that explains to them that a new planning application has been submitted and is ready and is out for review. And they receive the same type of information that you would on the dot. So the file number, the civic address, application type, all that information goes in the email as well. The email also includes a link back to this planning application portal. People can unsubscribe from it if they want to, if they think they've had enough emails. And that's the basis of this. So far, we have 4 people signed up for the subscription so far. So. And that's it. I'll take any questions if there's any.
James, sorry to interject. James, is it possible to no longer share your screen? It might help Reeve Smith get back to the
Okay.
portal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sherry, go ahead.
Can you just let us know at what point the dot gets put there? Like at the very beginning of their application?
That's a great question. Councillor Milligan, and I've had this conversation with a fellow council member already today, and it's the actual application will become public when the municipality deems the application complete. So if an application is submitted, let's say today, we have typically 30 days under the Planning Act to review it and determine whether or not enough information has been provided to deem it complete, or if it needs to be deemed incomplete. And nothing happens with an application before that critical decision has been made. So if an application has been deemed complete, then it's circulated to our technical reviewers, for example, the conservation authorities and the ministries, et cetera. And at that time, that's when the application becomes public in the portal. And we actually believe that many of the technical agencies may be also utilizing this system, because we'll be providing a link in our circulations for them to complete. We often get questions on geographic location, for example, on when people are doing site visits. Maybe it's more economical to co-locate certain files and do those together. So we think that there's going to be opportunity for them to gain efficiencies through the use of this portal as well.
Jason, just after your 30 days are up, and I've seen this here come out, and I had a question about it. Would I call the township office or call you, or what's the step if a person had concerns about it?
Yep. Great question. Yeah, absolutely. So there's contact details, I believe, in the portal itself, but the notices all have my email addresses, phone numbers, and they encourage anybody with question, comment, concern related to any of the files to direct that to the municipal office, particularly to myself. And if they're submitting, if they want to come in and go over a file and understand it in greater detail, we can do that. Or if they want to object to a file, for example, and send a 2-line email, then that's absolutely the opportunity to do so.
Okay, fair. I'll go to Kevin, and Doug had his hand up. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I didn't have anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Jason, we talked there earlier today, and we talked about the amount of time between when you put it on the portal and when council will see it. And I think that's what Sherry was asking too. What do you see that point of time where the public would have the opportunity to view it?
So from a circulation perspective, when we circulate files for review, there's a minimum 3-week window for agencies to provide that comment. So that's the absolute minimum that any file would be on the portal. But typically speaking, if any application necessitates a public meeting, for example, committee of adjustment or council approval, then it's several months before an applicant often gets into that time frame. So again, use an example, if an applicant came and submitted a minor variance application, and we deemed it complete within 12 days of receiving the application, it would become public after day 12 on the portal. And the committee of adjustment would meet typically 6 weeks out, 4 to 6 weeks. So that would be then available for 6-week period before the meeting, granted that everybody's comments came back in advance. There's then a 20-day appeal period after a decision is rendered on a planning decision. So you would have another 20 days on top of those 6 weeks. And that would be your term for that life cycle, I suppose, for that application on the portal.
So nominally, the public would have at least several weeks to month or so to be aware of the issues.
That's right. There's no mechanism by way of approving an application or having an application go through a process without there being a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks on this portal system.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, thank you. So Jason, this system applies to consents, minor variances, and applications for site plan control. Is that the entirety of the sorts of things that would be on this portal?
No, it's a bit further reaching than that, Deputy Reeve Wise. Zoning amendment applications, plan of subdivision application, plan of condominium, official plan amendments are also Planning Act applications that we would advertise on the portal. In terms of frequency, you might not see very many of those, obviously, but any Planning Act application we would have on the portal.
But and that's great. I think this is a wonderful device. But something, for example, like a simple building permit, that wouldn't go on this site.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, then I think Sherry. Did you have your hand up, Sherry?
I think my question was answered. Thanks.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead.
Does this, you're not getting rid of, Jason, or you're not getting rid of the old system. You're still going to put out notification, sending to the neighbors and such, there's a change or that type of thing, the same as we've always done. This is just an addition to that. Am I right?
Thanks, Councillor Richmond, for the comment. I should have mentioned that in my overview. That's absolutely correct. This system is completely in addition to anything that has historically been done within the municipality and that will continue to be done. So notifications in the Beaver newspaper as required, above and beyond signage on the properties, the orange signs that you see, as well as notification via mail to the neighbors. All that's continuing. This is essentially just another mechanism for maybe the generations who prefer to visualize their information digitally as opposed to by way of hard copy.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, Jason, just wondering, when we were going through the review, and I like this system very much, but just some of the information that come up the screen, I just wonder, does it completely clear privacy information? And I'm thinking of at mailing addresses and things like that. There seemed to be a couple pop up there, that were not local and all that stuff. I'm just wondering if all that information is cleared. Does it not meet the privacy?
So good question, Councillor Davison. In terms of and not to go back to share screen, but we can if that would be helpful for everybody. The information is applicant owner, primarily applicant owner, and file number and the description. We are not providing any sort of financial details that may be associated with a mortgage or any other confidential information. All the information that's been publicized through this portal system has been provided to the municipality on the application forms that are submitted.
Wondering more about mailing addresses and that. I seen a couple of mailing addresses pop up that weren't local.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. Maybe Mr. Richmond can point to me or point out where that would be. I'm not sure of where they are.
It shouldn't be mailing address. It's civic address of the location of the application. So there shouldn't be any mailing addresses, but we can check our data to make sure.
We can check. I just thought I seen something Ohio and something Cornwall come up on the screen, but we just a question to double check.
Oh, I think maybe that was when I was typing in the address. It does a search of sort of a large geolocate area. So
okay. I just don't want people getting irate messages at their home address or whatever.
No, that was just the search bar to search an address. So no, it wouldn't be included in the application point.
Any more questions for Jason? If not, I'd like a motion to accept the report. Moved by Wenda, second by Sherry. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks, Jason. Okay, we'll go to site plan control, exception request. Brian, do you want to step in here?
I might be able to help as
Oh,
well,
go ahead.
Reeve Smith.
Yep, go ahead.
By all means, CAO Brooks can jump in and add, but I can provide a quick overview in addition to what's been provided in the staff report. The owners of the property 4255 County Road 1 East, and many of us will recognize that as being the Lucky Dollar as opposed to its civic address in Yarker. The owners are seeking an exemption at this time to establish a shipping container or locate a shipping container on the property and not necessitate site plan control. The applicant is proposing to utilize the shipping container in conjunction with the existing commercial use. There's a site plan drawing that's been provided to outline the location of where that structure would be located. And it is in association with the LCBO use on the property, and specifically the storage of cans and bottles and et cetera. The rationale from staff's perspective in supporting such an exemption is threefold. First of which, the County of Lennox and Addington has no objections to the temporary installation of such a structure, and our site plan control bylaw has exemptions built into the bylaw that speak to the location on a county road, not necessitating site plan. Granted, it's lesser than I forget the number off the top of my head, 370 square meters, and that the county does not object to the exemption, and both of which are true in this instance. Thirdly, the applicant is proposing a greater overall development plan for this property. That greater overall development plan seeks the demolition of the existing single-family dwelling that's directly south of the commercial store on the subject property. So that is proposed to be demolished and be retrofitted for the installation of a parking lot with access out onto County Road 1. There would be accessible parking spaces. There would be a host of improvements to the property to support the commercial use on site. And there's also been consideration and conversation related to expanding the commercial building on site as if possible in the future with the development of a parking lot. For that reason, staff see the exemption for a temporary storage bin or shipping container to be appropriate, given the fact that the applicant will be completing the necessary drawings, technical studies, and engineering approvals to navigate the site plan control process within 12 months of this date. You may ask why then the building that's proposed now, or the shipping container proposed now, is being proposed in advance of that overall development. And the reason for that is it's tied to the contract with the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, the LCBO, who is essentially stated that, from my understanding through conversation with the applicant, stated that the volume of sales through this site or this subject property are one that necessitate that additional level of storage. So for them to maintain and keep the ability to operate as an LCBO, they need to find additional storage more quickly than 12 to 13 months into the future. So in a sense, we're before you here this evening as staff from an economic development perspective, as much as we are from a planning perspective. This is, in the opinion of staff, an appropriate hamlet use, commercial venture in the core of a hamlet that's very well populated and very well utilized, and one that we see additional growth opportunity being afforded to it. We, as staff, are working very closely with the applicant on what's needed in the future to make this a more compliant, improved situation. I've been to site multiple times, and there's absolutely opportunity for improvement from accessibility, parking, and pedestrian safety on that site. And all of those are very key considerations of site plan control. It's the exact use of that planning tool. So we see that application coming forward in the future. Should council accept and agree to the exemption this evening, the applicant has already committed to staff their willingness to enter into the affidavit that would be accompanying such an approval, recognizing the timeframes that are associated with the temporary status of the structure, as well as the goal to move forward with a more fulsome overall development plan and site plan control for the greater property. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for this? If not, okay, Doug, you have got a question?
It's not, well, it's a question and it's support. I support the concern. They certainly need some increased parking and that there. One little question though, I'm just wondering if there'd be a possibility maybe to have a privacy fence or screening or something placed in front of the 10-foot or 12-foot of fencing with a gate in it or something, just so it's a clean view from the road.
Through you, Reeve Smith. Yes, the short answer is yes. Building permits are necessitated, even though these are temporary bin. We would necessitate a building permit based on the size of the structure, and through that we could, as a municipality, as the building services department, require the applicant to conform and provide screening that could function to temporarily screen that building or structure.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
I'll just move that we move ahead with it.
Okay, receive the report and move ahead. Sounds good. Can I have a second, or Doug second that?
Yep.
Any more questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll go to the Stone Mills accounts payable. Christina, for June 2021.
Okay, so you have the reports in front of you for the June 2021 accounts payable. I don't have anything to draw to your attention, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for Christina? If not, can I have a motion to receive the report and pay the bills? Moved by Debbie, second by Wenda. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Chief Building Official Detler, update on proposed renovations to the Stone Mills Public Works Building.
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. First thing on the agenda tonight is the report on the ingress and humidity and moisture issues at the Stone Mills Public Works Building that's been ongoing and discussed in the past couple of years. We're hoping to move on to the next stage of having kind of a fee structure and kind of some approximate pricing of what it's going to cost to fix this and what it's going to cost to design the design drawings for fixing the problems that we've been experiencing in that building. Does anybody have any questions on the report and I guess the steps forward?
Any questions for Jake on this? If not, I have a motion to receive the report. Moved by Kevin, second by Debbie. All in favor? Carried. Second one, Stone Mills Recreation Project tender. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. So that's not just a motion that to receive the report, but to also move forward with coming back to council. Okay, that's what the recommendation was.
The whole report. Yep, Rick. Yep.
Okay, so the second one was in regards to the tender that we had close in June for the Stone Mills Recreation Center. Is sort of the last meeting, there was a long discussion regarding whether we could get grant approvals, and I'm happy to report that we have reached an agreement with the granting authorities that they're going to allow us to go ahead with the season, September till April, and then move the construction project start date to April, and hopefully have that finished for September of 2022. Any on council have any questions regarding that item?
Any questions for Jake on this? Go ahead, John.
Not a question, just a congratulations. That must be a load off, Jake. I'm really pleased that the grant for the refrigeration stuff can be used for next year. This is really a relief.
Anybody else? Okay, motion to receive that report, and good work, Jake. As I said, all in favor, motion carried. Staff update on education development charges bylaw levy.
Sorry, your worship, on the previous motion, I don't think I got the mover and seconder. If I could get that.
Who was it? Was it Doug and Debbie?
I don't think you got anybody, Eric.
Didn't take.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Doug and then Debbie.
Take
Sorry
two of us.
Thank you,
Brian.
worship. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. Okay, staff update on educational development charges bylaw.
Yes, thank you, your worship. This was something that came to the forefront in May, that Stone Mill staff thought had been maybe taken care of, and at their June 25th meeting, the French Public School Board locally passed the bylaw, and I'm told that it is have been signed by our educational minister Stephen Lecce, and this is something we're now collecting fees on. I thought it was imperative to update council on this development.
I guess the minister must overturn the other people on this here to go that route. Anyway, okay.
Your worship.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
If I may, just to clarify the political process that occurred there, is if you recall, Minister Stephen Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, did not provide ministerial approval and would not sign off on it. The school board circled back and went to the Ministry of Education and got ministerial sign off from the Ministry of Education. So that's essentially the political change that occurred that has resulted in this bylaw essentially being passed and supported by the province.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Brian, what does that consist of in our municipality? I think it's $300 for every home. Am I right with that? And what does that amount to for Stone Mills?
Yeah, so based on the volume, and I know that both our properties manager, CBO Detler, and manager of development services, Jason Sands, has closely looked at this. Right now, it's $300 per home, with a graduated fee increase to $344. With many other similar circumstances being way higher than $344, but what we have right now is a graduated system to be $344, which would equate to, and it's for a 15-year term, I believe. And based on our volume of last year, it was probably in the range of $15,000 per year, which means over the life of this, we might be looking at $225,000 was our contribution to that if volume stayed at the same level. So it's quite substantial over a 15-year period for the Township of Stone Mills. And as we mentioned this morning, we would have previously to this, we would have appreciated some opportunity to determine how we wanted to come up with those dollars towards, rather than burdening the development charge with new construction. But that wasn't afforded to the municipality, and it's been passed as a development charge.
Okay, anybody else? Looking for a motion to receive and file the staff update. Moved by John, second by Wenda. Sorry, John, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm not going to move that.
Sorry.
I object strongly to it. I think it's also a ridiculous way to try to raise money for the French board. What happens if there's a downturn and you don't have a lot of housing starts? Then do they ask us to slap a $500 development charge per house? It's ridiculous. I don't mind contributing to the school. I know there aren't many kids from Stone Mills going to this particular school, but that could change. And even if it doesn't, that's part of your social obligation is to support education. But I agree with what Brian said. We should have been able to say, okay, we will provide you $15,000 a year out of our general tax base. That's a tiny amount on individual tax bills, but it inhibits development, and it could become a more onerous charge if we have fewer housing starts in the future. So I won't support this motion. I know it's a futile gesture, but I say to hell with it.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yes, I didn't write this in the report, but I was doing a little research on this the other day, and I just happened to type in Google and CEPEO developmental charges. And unfortunately, this developmental charges didn't appear in the first 10 pages. It was all developmental charges enacted by the same school board in 2015, and reaction in places like Rockland and Cumberland to having a $444 developmental charge after 3 years jump to $1,044 in the fourth year, and counselors objecting strongly and feeling helpless.
Okay, anybody else? Now we'll see if anybody's got a motion. We'll look at you, John. Moved by Doug.
No, I'm,
Oh,
okay. First of all, you're calling it a motion. We
well, I
dealt with
need,
this issue. We dealt with this issue over a couple months ago, and none of council supported the issue. Unfortunately, we don't have a say in it. All we're doing here is just receiving it.
motion.
We're not
received.
making a motion to accept it. We're just receiving information. Is all
That's
we're
right.
doing.
Motion to receive and file the staff
I'll do
report.
that.
Yeah, that was the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Doug, seconded by Sherry. All in favor of this motion? I guess we better pass it. Carried. Anybody against? Thanks, John.
I don't even want to file it.
Sorry, what was that?
I don't even want to file it.
Okay. Municipal update on lease agreements for the conservation parks in the municipality.
Yes, so this is my final item tonight, and Jason is joining me on it. This is something that Jason's been working on, dating back since he started working here with Quinny to finally get this issue resolved. This is something that the municipality's been working with Quinny really dating back to 2016, when we generally tried to shift the ownership of these three parks to Stone Mills Township, but was unable to at that time. And this is kind of a wrapping up of the lease agreement, which is very similar to the lease agreement that we worked at with the M&R for Beaver Lake Park, and Quinny Conservation has used this kind of lease template with other parks and other municipalities. If Jason wants to add anything to that, he can go ahead. Otherwise, does anyone have any questions on this?
Go ahead, Jason, then we'll go to the questions.
Thanks, Jake and Reeve Smith. Very quickly, I don't have anything substantial aside from the fact that as CBO Detler had mentioned, we've been working on this agreement for some time now. I believe it's been included in your agenda package, the sort of blessing from Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. McNevin at the Quinny Conservation Authority as it relates to this agreement. And I'd also like to mention that our legal counsel is satisfied with what we have before you this evening in the form of the agreement. So although it's been some time in the making, we are pleased collectively as staff, legal counsel, as well as the Quinny Conservation Authority with the agreement. Thanks.
Any questions? Brian, go to you, then we'll go to Kevin.
Sorry, Your Worship, but just one further point of clarification, just to reiterate that the staff and management did whatever they could to attempt to actually acquire these properties, but it was due to the title on these properties that did not allow them to be transferred. And so therefore, that's what's required us to go into a lease agreement. So I know the original motion was for us to acquire these properties, but given the difficulties in getting that clear title, we've resulted to this as a backup to ensure that we had access and would provide liability in the recreation portion, but Quinte Conservation would be free of any sort of liability as a result of that use that's not part of their mandate.
Hey, Kevin, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just for other people that may be tuned in here, the lease agreement is basically we look after them. We're not paying anything or there's no money changing hands. It's just, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I'm bringing it up. It's just we look after the parks and keep them mowed and make sure they're safe for the kids. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Your Worship, through you, it's slightly more than that, Councillor Richmond, but the principle is the same. This all actually come about because the Conservation Authority was not able to provide insurance for any recreational opportunity on those properties. So you're correct in the sense that this is not a monetary transfer. I think there is is it $1? I think that's listed in the agreement. But really what it is, it's allowing the municipality to accept ownership by virtue of agreement for a liability perspective to make sure that in Newburgh we can continue with things like Canal Bash and winter festivals, things of that nature by actual recreation use, because there was a specific exclusion in the Conservation Authority's insurance policy that said they could not provide coverage for those events. So this is just tightening up that intended use with the agreement, with the lease agreement with the Conservation Authority.
Any other questions or comments? Look for a motion to accept the report and to have CAO Brooks and Reeve Smith execute the agreement as drafted. Do you have a question, John, or are you making the motion? Moved by John, second by Wenda. All in favor? Carried. That next staff update's pretty well, this is the one we just did, right, Brian? Or is that a different one?
That's correct, Your Worship. It was essentially two staff members doing the same report, and I duplicated the post.
No different wording. Okay, good enough. Items for, a second. Okay, items for consideration, discussion of recommended consultation with CCCE pertaining to improving community input and awareness of potential environmental sensitive developments in the future. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just getting back to the screen.
Yep, that's right.
So, Your Worship, there was some discussion that entailed last week with Deputy Reeve Wise in an effort to, if at a previous council meeting in June, there was a motion moved by council to discuss the coming together to discuss the request that was made by CCCE to establish a committee to complete a bylaw for what I believe was deemed as future risky applications. I wanted this topic on the agenda this evening. I wanted to pitch a proposal to council, which I believe is essentially going to accomplish the same structure and would mirror a similar process that we had in the past. In 2018-19, we had a similar project that had some considerable concerns identified from the community in the form of the Blue Earth Solar Project. There were certainly learning opportunities there from both staff, council, and the community, and we were able to come back to the table and have some collective discussion in the form of a two members of the community, as well as a council representation to just sit and hear the recommendations that they would like to see included. Staff take those recommendations, determine if there's any consideration that we can incorporate those into, and then we make those recommendations back to council. I believe that is similar to what the CCCE has requested in the form of striking a committee. When I say that I believe that this is a good opportunity, my expectation is that a number of these recommendations could be under consideration of the official plan amendment that's presently out for public interest. So there is an opportunity that if any of those recommendations would fit into an official plan amendment, that we could work that into this policy. So I would like to offer that for council consideration if they see that it's worthy, and as well, having that discussion with CCCE if they feel that that's able to accomplish what they're what their process was recommended, like as far as what they were recommending for a process, and just await direction formally from council as to what kind of interaction specific that we want for the CCCE group.
Okay, anybody comments or move forward on this? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Rather than jump right into something that could be potentially cumbersome like a committee, just a meeting or two with the group. All we've had so far are some email exchanges, wondering if there is some way that we can develop a mechanism for identifying development applications that would have some risk attached to them. And the reason I asked Jason earlier about the new development portal, if it applied to building permits, was to address those very situations, because a building permit wouldn't be subject to any public notice or pre-public awareness before being issued. So this meeting would just be to get some ideas for identifying a potentially risky building permit application. And I don't know what means could be developed for looking at that. Maybe none. There may be nothing that can be legally done in that regard, but I'd like to hear from the group what they're proposing, and give staff an opportunity to discuss that. And it would simply be it wouldn't be a meeting of council. It would be a small group. Certainly council members could attend if they wished. But I would move that we invite the group to such a meeting and hear what they have to say.
Okay, so you made a motion, so we got a second. Or when do you second that?
I do.
Your worship, before you start on the discussion on that, the only variation that we had to Deputy Reeves' suggestion was that the attempt was to have council representation, but to keep that minimal, on the basis that if we did have 4 council members that wanted to attend, it would constitute an official meeting. But the model that we suggested that we had with Blue Earth and that solar project was we had Councillor Milligan, the Public Works Manager, and myself, and then the representation from the other side. So we were thinking a council member. If we wanted to increase that, that's fine. Just not to a number of 4 that would constitute a quorum and a public process that would be attached to it, as we don't forward that same opportunity to other groups that have requirements for input.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, the way Brian's describing it, to get the input. If of the small, make it a smaller group, it's more manageable than having a large number of people there. To get the input, and then marry that with what we were showing tonight on the planning portal to see how the two of them will work for public awareness. I think the 2 concepts could work well together.
I'm going to say a couple things here first, then I'll go to you, Kevin. When we did Blue Earth, we had some people that were involved with Blue Earth. Tracy and can't think of the lady's name, but they were particularly concerned about that project. Where I have a bit of an issue here, we're getting the CCCE in and bringing up concerns about everything. And I understand where the Blue Earth people was, which was fine. We had a good committee, but I'm not really comfortable with having the CCC come in and put their concerns on risks, everything before the applicants even come to the table. The applicants make it, as Jason said earlier, is completely done through the municipality before it goes out. And then there's a 20 or 30 day, whatever it is there for these comments. And I think that's where it's all about. I think our processes work good over the years. I can't see right now why we even think about changing it. And what's going to happen if we get 10 other groups come who want to make ideas about things? Are we going to say yes, no, turn them down, or whatever? I have a little concern with this myself. There's a process right there, and if they got concerns about something, we got a 60-day or whatever it is, 30-day right now on the official plan. A lot of those remarks can be made then and dealt with. But I'm not very comfortable with meeting with the CCCE over applicants and different things that hasn't even brought forward yet. Anyway, Kevin, you had your hand up, I think, next.
Yeah, I did, Eric. I have to say I agree with you. I think as a group, they have the input on the official plan, just like any other person in the community. And I agree with you, the fact that you make room or whatever you want to call it for one group, then how many other groups may there be after that? Again, they can subscribe to the Stone Mills application portal, the planning portal, just like anybody else, and do their due diligence there. I do appreciate the input from the public. I think it's great that we have that, but I think we already have things in place for that. And I don't believe in giving one group say over any other person in this community. I think it's only fair that everybody is on the same ground here. And if you have an issue or a problem, you bring it to the staff or go through the system with it. The township pays for experts to give us the information that we need and desire to make decisions, and to the best of our ability and theirs. And we make those decisions. We're voted in people here that if we make those decisions, we have to stand behind them. And I think that's what a council's for. I don't believe a group coming in and suggesting or putting things to play for council is the right way to move. I think if they want to do that, that's fair. I've got no problem with it. But naming a group and then just walking in and saying, well, we want a meeting and we want to explain to you how this needs to be done or how we think it needs to be done, I don't think that's the right way to go. Like I said, we pay experts to give us a notification. We make the decisions. If we make the wrong decision, we have to stand behind that. And that's what we do. And that's why we get paid the big dollars. And that's my point on it. Thank you.
Okay, Sherry, do you have your hand up or no? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm just going to be brutally honest for a few minutes. I sat on the group with the Blue Earth folks, so I understand how staff is saying this would work, and it was a onerous task. It was long meetings. It was, in the end, it worked out well. If staff is willing to form this little group to listen to the issues and have perhaps a council member attend, I know for certain that person will not be me. I really struggled, and I know, I'm still kind of new at this, but I have never dealt with a group of people in the CCCE that have been so disrespectful. They've slandered all of council. However, I'll just speak for myself. There's been libelous things online. I've been called just about everything under the sun, as I'm sure you all have. And then to imagine sitting down across a table and trying to have an effective conversation, I just am not at the point where I could do that. However, if there's a group in the community, however small it may be, and I know in their correspondence, they say you have to do what the ratepayers elected you to do. And so I checked today, how many ratepayers or how many eligible voters were there in the last election? There were 6,752. And over the last 2 weeks since this came up, I've received 7 emails from folks from the CCCE. 3 of those emails were copy and pasted of each other. So when they say, do what the ratepayers want, do what the people that voted you in want, I honestly, in my heart, know that I have. Many people have stopped me on the street saying, surely to goodness, council's not going to do this bylaw, or, council did the right thing. You're not going to let this small group, tell council what to do. You guys were elected, they weren't. So when they say do what the ratepayers want. I sleep at night knowing that from the start of this, I have. So, however, all that being said, if there are still folks in the community that don't feel heard, and staff, like I said, and someone from council is willing to sit with them and listen to the concerns like we did with the Blue Earth, that worked, it did work really well. They were long meetings and it was hard, but in the end, I think everyone was satisfied. And it didn't feel like the group was taking anything from council. Everyone felt listened to, I believe. And I do think in the end, it was a positive experience. Thank you for listening.
We're gonna go to Debbie, Kevin, and everybody have a chance to speak first here.
Sure.
Go ahead. Debbie.
Yes, I feel like Sherry and Kevin, I cannot support this motion or this group at this time. I feel they can write a report and we can all read the report, which makes more sense to me if they have concerns or how they would like it presented. But there's many, many, many groups who would do an honest part to this committee, not just CCCE. Therefore, we either have to open it up or we have to deal with it as a council, as that's what our job is. And that's the way I feel. I just can't support the way some of the ignorance and disrespect that this council has had from them. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, go ahead, Wenda.
I appreciate everything that everyone's had to say. Last fall, when things were pretty hot, really hot, in the big open air meeting that we had out in the Public Works building, one of the motions that was passed was to look at this as a council with the community to ensure that there were safeguards put in place going forward in future situations that would be considered similar to the Slack Farm. So, I mean, we made a motion and it was passed. And then there was another motion that was made a few weeks ago or maybe a month ago to entertain for council to get together and talk about it and see how we wanted to handle this. So I think we do have another step to take before we can say yay or nay to forming this committee that's being recommended by CCCE. I think all the steps that staff has taken have been really good steps towards public awareness and public input. I don't know that we've answered all the concerns that were brought forward by CCCE, and I think maybe that's what we need to look at a little further. Sherry, I'm happy to hear that you felt that as arduous and painful as the Blue Earth was, that you were happy with the outcome. And I think that the issue that we faced last fall with environmental and the intensive livestock operation, I think warrants a similar opportunity for ratepayers to have their voice heard. I'm not suggesting that that's going to result in a bylaw or anything like that. I just think it is an opportunity for their voice to be heard. Doesn't have to be CCCE. It can be anyone really, and that has concerns around issues like that. I wouldn't even suggest that the entire CCCE is involved in that gathering of minds, but certainly one or two spokespersons, as has happened in the past. But I would like to see us sit down at the table and make sure that we've got it right going forward. And I would volunteer to be a counselor who would sit at that table.
I guess that I'm going to ask one question, Doug, then I'll go to you. You're staying sit. Oh, we lost you, Linda.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
still here
Oh,
for a
sorry,
while anyway.
Yeah. You said sit out the table. You talked about sitting down at the table with the CCC group?
No,
Or council.
A few representatives of CCCE and, well, certainly have our special meeting with council that we talked about. And then take it from there, depending on what our outcome is.
Okay, good enough. I just didn't understand that there. Go
Yeah,
ahead, John. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I think first of all, people haven't been listening too well to what's been said here, and I mean that politely, but I keep hearing comments about one particular group. And in Brian's discussion, I didn't hear him say that he wanted to sit down particularly with that one particular group. I heard him say he wanted to form a group. My thoughts on this is that the CCE requested a certain thing, and when you went through what they requested, the meat of it really was a discussion on ways to flag development that could be of an issue to an area. And I don't see anything wrong with listening to people about that. And if I understood Brian right, my thoughts was, and when I said I agreed with it, my thoughts was that you never sit down and have a discussion with a hall full of people. You have a small group of reasonable people who can come to a consensus and put their information into a package. And I mean, I would think of CCE forward a knowledgeable representative that can represent them well, and possibly we pick one or two other representatives from the community who might have interest. I can think of, for example, somebody that doesn't live too far from me that is quite interested in municipal affairs, that could sit down in a couple meeting session. And I'm not thinking of something like Blue Earth that went on and on. I'm thinking of a couple of meetings and put together your ideas that might enhance what Jason and James have already done. Because I think Jason and James' program will go a very long way. And if there's a couple other little flags that can be added, there's nothing wrong with listening to people. And I just think we're going too far, maybe because of past experiences. It doesn't hurt to form a small group of interested parties and listen to them.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I agree in one sense with Doug that it's good to listen to the people. I agree that you give that option to all the people in the community, not a specific group, not this or that. You pointed out earlier, Eric, that group consisted of people that were involved in the putting together of that solar farm. There was people from the community, there was counselors, everybody had a stake in that. These people are talking about other people's stake. They're talking about other people's issues here that could affect their way of doing business or whatever in this community. I, for one, think they deserve a voice like everybody else, and I'm all for listening to that voice. But I do not believe for 1 minute that we need to start to have groups of people that come to have meetings to try and voice their opinions through a group. I think everybody should have that opportunity. So having said that, I'll put a motion for that. No, we don't accept it.
We have a motion already on the floor.
Oh, is there? Okay.
So we're in the discussion now, then we gotta go with that
Okay.
motion. I guess, a couple words here to me and in a couple situations, we talk about risk. Who determines the risk? And I look back right now in my own mind, seeing what's happened. If this committee had been formed, there's a perfectly honest, up-to-date hog farm going on, and it wouldn't have got passed with that committee. There's been no rules broke, and there's been hog manure there put on there for years and everything like that. And they were strongly against it from the first. And there have been no rules broke. Like I say, I got further in somebody's phone. But I think, you look back at it, you know, and I'm gonna speak out right honestly right now, like Sherry said, you know, for what that group didn't get their way with the hogs thing and turned around and put the council, what they went through, dollars and cents spent on accusations. Pretty well, we said we didn't have a meeting, and they pretty well said, you know, you lied, you had a meeting. So that group right there, I have no intentions of sitting at a table with them. And that's just the way I feel. And I'll tell you, there's thousands of taxpayers out there feel the same. It's just not 2 or 3 of Sherry or I or anybody sitting around this table. But that's just unacceptable to me. You know, and I might as well put it right like the way it is. And that's just the way it is. And that's what everybody tells me since they heard about this. People are fed up with that group and what they're doing to the township. So I might better say that's enough right now. Anyway, if there's nothing else, I'll get Brian to read the motion back. Do you have something? Oh, sorry, John, I thought you were putting your arm. Read the motion back and we'll go from there. Brian, you want to read that motion?
Yes, your worship. I did not get the mover and seconder as the introduction of this was going on. Go ahead.
John made the motion and was Doug
No,
seconded?
Second.
Oh, sorry,
Wendy.
yeah, okay.
Thank you. So the recommendation was what was included in the agenda, which the council directs CAO Brooks, Manager of Development Services, Sands, and a council representative to schedule a meeting with CCE representatives to receive input for consideration on future, and in quotations, risky applications.
Okay, everybody hear the recommendation? You, when you're in the other corner, I see you now. Okay, all
I
in
just
favor of the, sorry, go ahead, Sherry.
The question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Brian, when you read that motion, is that what we did with Bluer? Is it the same thing?
No.
Well, it's very difficult to compare the two, Councilor Milligan, because we've got a request before us that specifically identifies an opportunity for a community to be created, and this is a separate recommendation that would essentially facilitate what we believe they've asked for as far as an opportunity to sit and discuss and have input on future risky applications, pardon the expression. But what we did with Blue Earth was basically there were significant differences that were highlighted as part of that process. There was significant dissatisfaction by the way the process was dealt with, or at least perceived. And we forwarded them an opportunity to sit down and relay those concerns to us. We took those concerns literally in receipt. As you recall, we just received them. And then we worked to see what kind of alterations that we could do to limit that type of occurrence from reoccurring again. So to me, the principle is the same. And to other council members' request, if a group of 10 people during an open OP process, only during the open official plan process, requested to meet with Jason and I to discuss some comments, we would probably facilitate that same opportunity. So I don't believe, for council consideration, I don't believe that we're doing something just unique to this group. This is an open comment period. And this is something that I would always encourage Jason and I to participate in during that open period. If council feels that this is facilitating a specific group more than others, I'm trying to alleviate you of the concern that to be the case. If council had a special meeting with this group, that would be doing that. But what we're trying to do is, from a staff perspective, is any opportunity that we get for education so that we don't walk down a similar path that has public concern, we want to gain that education too, to learn from our learning opportunities as well. So yes, Councillor Milligan, I believe it is the same as to what we did, but the process to how we got there is very different. So I'll just digress and await council direction.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, what my motion is aimed at is basically simply accommodating a request from some people who have some concerns, who want to meet with staff, and in this case, with the opportunity for a counselor to sit in. Some of the comments would seem to imply that nobody from the community should be able to meet with staff to air their concerns about any issue. Is that seems to be what's being said here. I think just the opposite. We're saying, how many more groups will there be? Well, as many as one on any issue. staff are here to hear concerns, and these people aren't asking to, well, they were asking to form a committee. I'm saying that's unrealistic at this point. They're sending a couple of people to talk to Jason and Brian, and I'm suggesting that maybe a counselor or two can sit in on that meeting. That doesn't seem like such an extreme request. If you have personal objections because of their behavior to you as an individual, you don't have to attend.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I hear you, John, but just they don't need a special notification from us to go and talk to our staff people. That's not what we're here for to do neither. I mean, the point here is if they want to go and talk to staff and 2 or 3 people want to get together, we'll go ahead and do it. And then it will be brought to council. And it's not having a group per se organized and doing this sort of thing. It's, you know, to me, if people want to get together and give input, I'm all for it. But this is a process that seems to be being developed for them as a group. And I don't agree with that. I think that everybody has the same right to give information or seek information or whatever you want to call it, and let everybody do it, not just this group or that group or what everybody. It's open door, and they want to meet with Brian and Jason. That's fair. I got no problems with that. Like just like anybody else in the community. So I don't know why we were even doing this, but that's just my thoughts on it.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, fair enough, Kevin. So if I withdraw my motion, Brian, is there any reason that reps from the group can come and meet with you and Jason, and that you could issue an invitation to up to 3 counselors, so it's not an official meeting, could attend? Do we need a motion at all to facilitate that?
The answer to that is Deputy Revised. The only variation to what we normally operate is we would not normally have an invite to council members to partake in that discussion, because it would be essentially facilitating that commenting period. Now, if members of council wanted to join that group as members of the CCE or the group that had requested that meeting, then that's a totally different issue. But there's nothing holding anybody back from providing comment. This was just a pitch from staff as a way to deal with the facilitated request that was on the record, and an opportunity to get those comments inside the official plan period. But there really are no restrictions. Quite honestly, if that group requested an opportunity to meet with Jason and I, and timing would permit, we wouldn't be seeking council approval for that. It's the council invitation that changes what we would normally operate. We normally would not include council in that invitation to provide commenting.
But I think at any one time, any 2 people, if they got a meeting, can walk in that office and sit down with whoever, a couple of them. If Brian, if you can arrange the meeting with any 2 people, maybe miss the neighbor down the road, you know, whatever. But I think it's just the fact that the CCC is, you know, they want to form a committee and whatnot, but I don't think they need to meet with council and staff. If they want to meet with staff, I have a problem with that. Go ahead, John.
But my motion wasn't about forming a committee.
No,
it was simply to facilitate this meeting, and I will withdraw my motion, and I will suggest that to the CCCE, and I'll do that by way of an email, or Brian can do it, that they approach Brian and Jason and perhaps Jake or whoever, and that any counselor who wants to attend, and I will attend, and I'm assuming Wenda probably will, and maybe Doug, up to 3 counselors can participate in that meeting. So in order to avoid the dissension of a vote on this issue, I'm going to withdraw that motion and suggest that the CCE simply approach staff and that Brian let me know and the rest of council that that's happening, and invite participation by counselors if they wish to attend.
And why would council have to be there when they're having a meeting with their planner?
Because they have requested that council take an interest in this, and I don't see any reason that a councillor could not participate in such a meeting. Would there be any problem with Wenda and I being at a meeting like that if the group wanted us to attend?
I don't know, I'd have to talk to Brian, I'd have to talk to Brian on that. I don't know the legality, how that goes, but I mean, here basically what we're saying is they wanted to meet with council and staff and themselves, like the three parties there at one time.
No,
Right?
they weren't looking for that. They were looking for a committee with some
Yeah.
council representation. So, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
If, just to avoid the dissension of a vote, and it looks like it would be voted down, why don't I just withdraw the motion and have the CCE approach staff for a meeting? But I will simply ask Brian, is there any reason why we couldn't do this that way? And I would be happy to attend that meeting because I think it's a legitimate issue. How do we identify risky projects? The portal that Jason's talking about is a great thing, but it won't include building permit applications.
I'm just going to say one thing. I'm going to say two things. Do you want to withdraw your motion? And I'll get the second to do that. And we'll get that out of the way if you want, or it gets mixed up there. Do you want to withdraw your motion?
I'm going to withdraw
Yeah.
the motion at this time.
And
I
when
may
did-
have to make another.
And I'm supportive of
Okay,
that.
so motion is off the book. And I guess, like I said, back to the thing, maybe they can get together and say, okay, this is risky. Who defines risk, and who the ratepayers come and tell us that we should make a decision as council on a risky situation, whatever, when we have a planner and we have all the government agencies we go to. And I think back to Sherry or somebody said, we're here to make decisions on the best information that we got. And we have agencies, ministries that do that. And like this, in one of the, I think Mr. Juan or somebody says, here, we can get our own studies done on this. Well, I can see this going out in left field to a certain degree. I mean, council's here, as Kevin said, make the decisions. We have the agencies we can go to and done them. And we determine that with the information we got. And it's not the taxpayers that come and say, here, you can't do that. And some poor application is going to be stuck on hold for God knows how long. That's my scary part of it.
And
ahead,
that's what the meeting would be to talk about, Eric. You may be perfectly right. The outcome of the meeting could be, we have all the mechanisms in place. There's no legal way that we can predetermine a risk. I'm interested to hear how they think that a risk could be identified, who would do it, just exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't our job here to make decisions?
Yes, it is, but it's also our job to listen to other ways that decisions can be made. You may be perfectly right. That's what the meeting is for, is to determine what means there could be to determine risk ahead of the issuance of a building permit. You could be perfectly right. There may be no means. I simply want to hear what these people, what sort of ideas they have for identifying risks that maybe we haven't thought of. Okay.
Debbie had her hand up, then you, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just wondering how much dollars and time council's ready to commit for our CAO to sit down with this group to start with. And then I come back, there's going to be 8 or 10 more out there that want their little group heard. How much time and how much money are we willing to commit to Brian when it could all be done in a report?
Okay.
That's the way things are handled, by report, not with 5 or 6 people in a little meeting. That's a committee, and we didn't justify a committee.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that any group, any people, whoever they want, can meet with staff. I think it's only fair that they meet with staff and then staff come back with a report, as Debbie has just said, to all council, rather than have 2 or 3 councillors that agree with having it this way, sitting on the meeting or in the meeting and coming back to council. I think they can meet with staff, they can meet with the planner, they can give their information as any other person in this community can do, as they always have. That report comes back to council, all of council, not 2 or 3 people, all of council, and then decisions are made from there. That's the way I've always seen business done. And I think that's the way it should be done. And I'll move that we do it in that fashion.
You got that motion, Brian?
Your worship, I just have it summarized as that any group desiring to meet with staff be granted the opportunity with a report being brought to council for consideration as part of the official plan review process. Is that correct, Councillor Richmond?
That's good enough. As any other group or person can.
Have a seconder? John, you second that?
I'll second it as long as Kevin isn't suggesting that a councillor cannot accompany any constituent that wants to meet with staff.
It's fair enough, I guess. I
Well,
just
I
don't,
should hope so.
I don't see
I
what,
should
I
hope
don't,
so.
well, I don't see the point in it, John, if it's
It
coming
doesn't
back
matter
as
if you
a
don't see
report.
the point, Kevin. The fact is, if you want to accompany a resident to a meeting with staff, that seems to me like a pretty fundamental function of a politician. You may see it as pointless.
The motion's out there. And,
Yep.
and if you want to go in there, John, that's fine. I'm not going to
Good.
object to it.
Okay,
But
good.
the motion I just put out there is the motion.
Okay.
Did I say you couldn't go, John?
You implied you
Did
didn't
I
see
say
that it was.
you couldn't go? I
No, you
said
didn't, Kevin.
it should come back as a report to all councillors. I didn't say you couldn't go. I
Well,
don't
then your
remember
motion
saying
is
that.
irrelevant because anyone can do that right now.
Okay. John, you still second that motion again?
I do.
You second his motion. Okay, Brian, you got the motion. Okay, any more discussion on that motion? Debbie, you have something?
I just wonder if the Reeve is expected to attend these meetings. He is the head of council, and perhaps he should be with CAO Brooks or whoever to, as representing council. He is the Reeve.
This isn't representing council, I don't think, John, or then this is just a member of, well, Kevin made the motion. His motion said that, no, I'll say no right now. Okay, Doug, you got something to say here?
Yeah, I have. I think we just made a mountain out of a molehill, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if I was speaking some other language or not, but what I said a few minutes ago, or maybe half an hour ago now, was get 2 or 3 people, not a whole group, have a meeting, people agree on what might be a concern, and that was it. And we didn't give anybody any powers to take control or anything else, just to make a few recommendations, and then staff and us would make the decision. And it seems like we've spent a half an hour after that was chasing our tail. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay, so everybody know what the motion is?
Could Brian read it back to us, please?
Sure, Brian.
Your worship, the motion reads that any group desiring to meet with staff be granted the opportunity with a report being brought to council for consideration as part of the official plan review process.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, carried. Okay, any new business or statements from members?
Sorry, your worship, there is one other item
Oh,
that
sorry, I
is
missed
still
one.
there. Yeah, at the skate park.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, yeah. Sorry, a request for Carolyn St. Clair to have the township agree to be a sponsor of the facility application under the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. Go ahead, Brian.
Your worship, last week I received a call from Carolyn Sinclair asking if the municipality would agree to be a sponsor. A sponsor is essentially a conduit, as described by Carolyn. As they're not a non-for-profit group, or given that status, they don't have the ability to apply for this grant. They asked if they made application for this project, if the municipality would agree to be the agency that's essentially sponsoring them to facilitate the funds as the eligible organization and to ensure that they're used in accordance. So if I may get council's approval to do that, the skate park committee is looking at completing the application and then would be looking for the municipality to fill in any component that is specific to our operation to facilitate this grant application. So before council does that, I would just like to make sure that both the committee and council are clear in the sense of what we have from a direction from council, which is up to this point, we've agreed to provide the location for the park. which has been tentatively earmarked for the fire department location, which is, we're not sure how large of a footprint that they're after, but they're looking at getting some design work. But it is on the western side of the fire department in Tamworth. We would also look to provide any sort of in-kind contribution as far as any excavation of a hole or any gravel, etc. Resources that we have that would not require dollars invested, so to speak, from outside, as well as facilitating that agreement. So there is a question that has loomed as to what council could contribute to this project. And I've essentially reiterated what I believe to be true, and that there's no financial commitment from the municipality to this project, as it wasn't included in budget. And as part of the approval to the site, there was no cost consideration approved by council. So I'd like to get those two things clarified and just get approved. If council approves, for us to be the flow through or the sponsor for that application.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so Brian, we would just be the conduit. We've done this sort of thing before with other groups that don't have a charitable, whatever it's called. They're not a registered charity, have we not?
That's correct. It's similar to what we do at the Volunteer Fire Association. They don't have that designation. So if an individual passes away and they make municipal contributions to us earmarked for the fire department, we act as the conduit to ensure those dollars are earmarked into the municipal operation, specific to whatever that request is. We did it for recreation purposes. We did it for fire purposes. But the important part is the legwork for this application, from our staff's perspective, needs to be done by that committee. As you know, there have been some significant recreation asks in the past, as far as the pickleball court, tennis courts, some expansions to some parks that we haven't been able to commit to just by limitations with what we're putting into the arena for our recreation dollars. So I just don't want to, treat them differently, this application differently than we have with past applicants. And that's why I'm relatively persistent that this application be completed by the volunteer group. And then we would add whatever information we have to that.
No, I think it's a good idea. Do you need a motion, Brian, or just?
I should have a motion to endorse that, so that if there's ever anything required for part of the nation, that I would have that resolution to support the submission.
Yeah, I'll move it
You
then.
make a motion. Wenda, you going to second it? Okay. Any more comments or questions? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay. New business. Excuse me. New business and statements from members. I guess nobody. Oh, go ahead, Wenda.
Yes, we all received email letter from Lawrence. He was representing Friends of the Napanee River, and they wanted to offer their congratulations and appreciation for all the great signage that's been placed on all of the parks, Newburgh's, Camden East, Yarker, and Colebrook. He included with his letter some pictures, which were great. And he just wanted it to be put on the record how much he appreciated the work of Jeff Thompson and Wayne Wilkinson for a great job.
Very, very good. Kevin, do you have something?
Yeah, maybe a question for Christina or Brian if she's still on. I had a fellow come to me and said the TD Bank was not going to pay their taxes anymore through their mortgage. And he was wondering, he asked me how that would work or how he could pay his taxes. And I said, call the township office and they'll set something up for him. Whether it's like they take it out monthly out of his account or something to that effect. Because he was told by TD Bank that they're no longer going to do it. That's the question, I guess.
I would strongly encourage Councillor Richmond to have that individual contact our Treasury Department. The benefits of using our pre-authorized payment plan, which is similar to the bank, is that it's interest and penalty free. So individuals that sign up for our plan get interest and penalty free, whereas the banks do not. The system that the banks have is they essentially try to get you ahead far enough so that they've got a full year's taxes sitting there waiting. So it's a little bit of a up and down as far as what the deposits are, but short story is we offer pre-authorized payment plans at the municipality, which I believe are both I think what, the 15th and the 30th of each month. And individuals can opt into those as long as they're at a zero balance in their taxes.
No, basically, I told them to call the office and work something out with you folks, but just, I thought I'd throw it out there because I was surprised to hear that from the bank.
Counselor-
but,
Wanna say something?
Yeah, actually, we're hearing that from a lot of banks. It seems to be the norm where they're flipping most customers who are renewing their mortgages. They're not including their taxes. So we're having a lot more people sign up for the pre-authorized program where it's automatic withdrawal out of their account, either the 15th or 30th or on the tax due dates. Yeah, so just have them contact us.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new?
The banks aren't making enough profit.
Yeah, that's right.
Any other new business? Okay, can I motion for confirming bylaw? Moved by John, second by Doug, all in favor? Motion to adjourn? Wenda, Debbie? All in favor? Good night, everybody.
Good
Hey,
night.
folks,